Well, it's easy to look at previous entries of Need for Speed like Underground 2 or Hot Pursuit that almost were genre defining and to say, well, just do that again. But if that's the case, then why isn't that happening? Well, for starters, I think that while Hot Pursuit is great, there's nothing to it other than driving. No car upgrades, no purchasing of any vehicles you want, you get told what you're driving and when. Then take a look at Underground 2. While earth-shattering in its own way, if they were to do a remake, then players would say,
all they do is remake games because they can't think of new ideas.
And if there's no remake and they just make a different game, then you all say,
why didn't they just remake Underground 2?
What did you like about your favorite Need for Speed game? Was it the music, the characters, the driving, car customization? Or was it just that the game was refreshing? Sure, if you go back to Underground 2 these days, it still plays well and feels awesome. But haven't we evolved past comparisons? Isn't it exhausting to constantly be comparing new products to things you used to like? When it comes to Need for Speed games, I personally feel like an outlier. I enjoy a lot of the newer titles. I think they do have major issues, but to sit and denounce them because they didn't live up to previous entries is pathetic. To say that Need for Speed Racing is too arcadey and not realistic is like saying, I hate fish because they can't walk. Bitch, they weren't designed to do that. Need for Speed games are designed to be a quick, arcade-type racing game using licensed cars. Regardless of what the fans want to believe, that's what the game is and always will be. When we talk about good Need for Speed games, what exactly are we talking about? I think the simplest answer is a racing game that anyone can pick up and feel like a street racer. We want to play a game that gives us adrenaline rush as much as it gives us the vibes. We want to feel like a badass car owner without having to worry about gear tuning like in Forza. The Need for Speed series thrives on simplicity, and simply put, the more they add into the games, the more they'll continue to lose their identity. The new Need for Speed games are certainly not bad, but they also aren't like the old games. Call me whatever you want, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed my time with Heat and Unbound. I think the stories are fine. I liked Unbound's redemption story much more than other racing games. But to be honest, I don't know what kind of constructive criticism to give any racing game's story. We've seen all the cliches. New in town, it's a big citywide festival, race to get your car back. What else is there to say when it comes to cars? I know that there's people out there who can come up with much better stories than these, so why do we keep getting the same stories over and over again? And if they choose to not put a story in, then it's always just some big citywide racing event. Figure out something better. You're gonna hate me, but I think the gameplay style of Need for Speed falls somewhere in between Mario Kart and Forza, which I understand is an insanely wide spectrum, but there are so many Need for Speed games. You have racing sims, street racing, mobile ports, and what I would consider a street beat 'em up. You can come back to a Need for Speed game without having to worry about relearning racing tech, because the games are simple. Drive forward. If a turn's coming up, you either turn or tap the brake and drift. Then you try to get first place. It never really comes down to having the best car or the best parts installed on your car, because in single player, everyone has insane rubber banding, so they keep pace anyways, and in multiplayer, everyone just uses a skyline and calls it a day. I don't think that the Need for Speed games are so much bad as much as they're plagued by an uninspired fan base. If you play a racing game and find yourself going after the same cars doing the same paint jobs in every racing game, then maybe stop being surprised when you get bored from racing games. Need for Speed exudes style. That's what the games have always been about. Back in the day, it was the music. Now it's the car customization. In modern Need for Speed games, you can customize your car more than ever, and to put it plainly, it rocks. I think the systems are easy enough to understand, but in-depth enough to really make the car yours. Music, cars, and the streets you drive on are what truly make a Need for Speed game a Need for Speed game. But we need to sit back and ask ourselves if the game itself is really bad or if we're just looking for a different type of game. If you really want to know my take on the new Need for Speed games, I think they're fun to play but not worth revisiting. I think the police are awful to play against because the rubber banding is unfair, and at level 5 heat you can get one tapped almost immediately if you're driving a fresh car. I also think the games are terribly optimized. I had to run Unbound with Windows 8 compatibility mode because it doesn't know what to do with multi-threaded CPUs, so the game just slows down to various speeds when it shits the bed. But with all of these problems, I'm still able to sit here and say, this game honestly is fun, and I got my money's worth. Does that make me a sheep? Does that make me some kind of cringe? No. Because I'm able to look at a product and see the amount of effort it took to make something like that. You all may think it comes down to placing assets on a map and giving a car some physics, but there's so much thought that goes into these games that many of you take for granted. I know a lot of the videos on my channel could be simplified into,
no, this game is good and you guys are wrong.
But like I said, to sit and denounce an entire game series and call it dead just because you personally don't like a game is cringe. So while you get ready to fire at me on all cylinders, I really want you to think to yourself, does this racing game suck? Or do I just not like it?